ask for anything better than this.
Good evening, friends. Welcome to yet another awesome session of Mindful Living. We really appreciate your taking out the time and joining the session today. Your joining the session today clearly demonstrates that you are passionate about people, about our planet, and about the prosperity of all concerned. And that makes it really special because these are themes which are very, very close to my heart. I assure you that we shall do our best to make this investment of time worth your while. Friends, I worked with Tata Group for about 8 years, and Jamshedji Tata founded the Tata Group on the basic tenet that the mission of righteous person is not merely to live a good life, but to make life better for others. And for over 150 years, the Tata Group has been working not to maximize the profit, but to maximize the well-being for all, for building the nation. However, just before I joined the Tata Group, I was working for a stockbroking firm. And when you are in the stock markets, what is it that you value the most? What is it that you worship? You could unmute and speak, or you could type in the chat. When you are in the stock markets, what do you get rewarded for? What do you worship? In the stock markets, friend, we worship profits, we worship valuations. And this firm that I was working for had just released a report on the biggest wealth creators of India. And the company that had featured #1 in that list was none other than Tata Steel. And the managing director of Tata Steel had come to receive the award. He received the award. And then in his acceptance speech, he said something which completely blew my mind away. He said that the real wealth that we have created is not in the stock market valuations, but in the benefit of the society, the social capital that we have created. And I thought to myself, what is he talking about? Social wealth? Well-being of community? Friends, I'm a finance professional. I'm a cost accountant and MBA in finance, and I'm trained to think and work in a manner which maximizes the profits and valuations of the company. So at that point of time, it really appeared strange to me that somebody is talking about social capital and well-being of people. This was in 2001. Couple of years later, in 2008, we had stock market crash in USA, which had a domino effect on all the economies across the world. Stock markets tanked and trillions of dollars of capital was wiped out, wealth was wiped out. And this scam which happened was collusion by many leading institutions. And that had a devastating effect. And that set me thinking that single-minded pursuit of profits cannot be the only thing for a business to strive for. And that one thing led to the other. I started expanding my thought process to be more inclusive in my approach and respecting and valuing organizations that care for not only profits, but also people and planet. And it is in this context, when I met DHIRAJ at a retreat last year, I was deeply impressed by the work DHIRAJ is doing. Dheeraj is an engineer from the prestigious BITS Pilani and has donned several hats over the last 29 years as a business leader, process consultant, social entrepreneur, passionate about technology-enabled social change. In 2009, he co-founded B2R Technologies, a rural BPO organization delivering best-in-class business support services to global corporations by training and employing rural youth. It is a testimony to the high quality of work that Dheeraj is doing at B2R that the word has spread across the borders, and it was mentioned in a social conference which was organized by Harvard Business School. And recently, he was invited by government of Mexico to set up a delivery center on the same model that he is running in India. Dheeraj, we really appreciate your taking out time from the busy schedule and joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Ashish. It's great to be here. Hello, everybody.
Thank you, Dheeraj. Friends, some of you are joining us for the first time. If you're joining a session of Mindful Living for the first time, please type FT in the chat box. Allow me a minute to introduce myself. My name is Ashish Kumar, and I'm the founder of Mindful Living. I started Mindful Living in 2018. Prior to that, I worked in the corporate sector for a couple of years in senior management roles with organizations like Tata Group, Future Group, HCL, and an enterprise promoted by the Dabur family. During the years of my working in the corporate sector, I saw at close quarters the impact the stress has on the health, happiness, and well-being of the employees. Being a certified mindfulness meditation teacher myself, I thought the message of living consciously has to be taken to the corporate sector. And with the vision of impacting over 1 million working professionals, I started Mindful Living in 2018. With good wishes of all, we have got great success, and we have conducted over 300 sessions for over 50 leading organizations in India, which include Aditya Birla Group, Tata Group, IBM, Signify, Schneider, EXL, Kotak, SDFC Life, and many other organizations. The session today is being organized as a part of our community initiative, which started in April 2020 when the first lockdown took place. Few of my friends reached out to me and requested me to conduct a mindfulness meditation session for them so that it helps them deal with the stress that the lockdown is causing. So just allow me a minute, friends. There is some people come. So to deal with the stress that the lockdown is causing, so I organized a session on mindfulness meditation over a weekend. One thing led to the other, and that small group of friends has become to be a vibrant group of over 3,000 people today who connect every weekend and during the week and share thoughts on how to live consciously. In case you would like to join this community, please click on the link that we have shared and join us. There is no fees to it, and this is a very safe space. And this is a very safe space to share thoughts about living consciously. There we don't allow any political posts or religious posts. You can share your thoughts and learn to live consciously. All the videos of our previous sessions, 100+ videos, are uploaded on our YouTube channel, and you can click on the link of our YouTube channel and access those videos there. Our sessions are guaranteed to improve the quality of your life. And on that note, I will like to invite Dheeraj to share his thoughts and how his journey has been, how did it start, and we'll be happy to hear his views on that.
Thanks. Thank you, Ashish. Happy to, I've told you earlier also, of course, but I love the mission that you've taken up on mindful living. And I am happy to be part of this discussion to share how our journey has been in becoming more mindful, if I may say so, on the people, planet, and profit side. To start with, I think the best thing would be to maybe put something on the spotlight is the spotlight should be perhaps where I'm sitting rather than me, because I am just a product of what is around me. And that's what what you see is outside my window, which is, of course, a huge amount of, you can see a lot of green, you can see a lot of clouds. And of course, when it's not raining, you can see the Himalayas right from here. This is where I'm sitting right now. And just thought it would be good to get everyone a little more familiar, acquainted. Some of you are perhaps already aware of the hills. I just thought a visual glimpse would help. Back to you, Ashish.
Really, really very beautiful, Dheeraj.
So, to tell you a little bit more about us, Ashish, as you'd shared a little bit in our introduction already about D2R, what it is in very brief. I think it's always interesting to understand how something like this started. So maybe that is how we could start this chat too.
Yeah.
So what we do is summarized in a one line very nicely with what Ashish mentioned, which is, I just want to check, is my voice clearly audible?
We can hear you clear. Good, Dheeraj.
Okay, cool. So the journey for creating this is a 13-year short one, a young journey, as we call it, of a young organization who's gone through many things to reach where it has. But what was the goal and how it all started? Perhaps just rewind a bit is useful to understand. What we do is create jobs, create livelihood, create a career path for young people in areas where I just showed you, where the only alternative career option is sustainable, or rather sustenance agriculture, as well as maybe seasonal tourism. These are the only main choices which are available to young people here. And it is here that we thought is an additional challenge. While jobs everywhere around the country are a challenge, and maybe whether even in a city there are people who are having similar challenges, but we said if you take the problem of migration, out migration, as well as look at the hills where the economic, they're never in the economic mainstream. The hills are often thought about only when you have a hot summer morning and you said, maybe I need to go for a break. But the economic mainstream is usually kept aside. So I have been wandering in these hills for about maybe 35 odd years now, as a traveler, as a backpacker, as a biker, as a trekker. And in many of these journeys, I used to interact and meet young people, seeing often the frustration that they used to express to me about how education is being pushed by their parents, but they cannot imagine what they will do after education. Even if they do 10, 12 years of education, what will they do after that? It was their frustration of what am I going to do after I study that I used to carry back from many of my journeys. The other thing which came together for me personally, of course, one was the experiencing of this frustration of the young people I interacted with. The other was my own personal insights and beliefs that I came with, which is that we often find so many things around us which are not what we like, or what are not to our liking, or what we feel is bad about our country, our state, our region, our village, our neighborhood. We have enough and more to point fingers at and say, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is something which, why isn't the government doing, why isn't the bureaucrat doing, why isn't the politician doing anything about it? I have, of course, observed many things, whether it is poverty, whether it is livelihood, whether it is waste, or there's so many things around us that we wish would have been different. The simple question that I have often asked is, what am I going to do to change things? And if that is not coming across as an answer to me, then my critiquing it is actually not adding any value. So that was the second bit of what came together for me, is what am I going to change things about things which I'm seeing as I'm not comfortable with, I'm not happy with. And one of them, which as I had seen in the hills, was The third, in my own personal journey, I had, of course, climbed the career graph. You mentioned about yours. I have had a similar career graph of nearly about 16 years before I started B2R. And I had climbed the corporate ladder, the corporate ladder as it climbs your career graph, your bank balance. But those measures of your career graph and bank balance were not good enough or satisfying enough or fulfilling enough. So as I reflected on my own growth, on my own journey, all of these three things together came together for me in terms of what am I going to change things, seeing the live situation about what in the hills found many frustration and a lot of youths who were always wondering about पढ़ तो लेंगे पर उसके बाद क्या होगा. And the third bit was about this aspect of how would I want to measure fulfilling life for myself. So they came together, and I met in one of these lovely hill walks. I met somebody who actually asked me, "What are you doing here?" Actually, it was again another personal trigger when I attended an Isha program in 2008 and started looking at how I'm going to define what is fulfilling for me. It was with that clarity that I started looking at what am I not going to define as my way path ahead. So while I wasn't clear what I was going to do, I was reasonably becoming clear what I don't wish to do. And it was the starting point for me कि ये नहीं करना है और क्या करना है ये अभी clear नहीं है, but ये नहीं करना है. Yeah. So that trigger in 2008 became an opening for me to club all of these things together, to sort of come together and look at, and of course that visit when I came here and I met somebody who said, "Acha, yahan kya kar rahe ho?" And I said, "I am still figuring out what to do." I had already quit my job, but without clarity of what I'm going to do next, with only the clarity of, incidentally, I also worked in insurance like you, but I was managing the back office captive before I started this. I was managing a back office captive of an American company in India and doing revenue cycle management for physicians of US. So I understood that that is not what I wish to do. It came together for me. And that question for me saying, "What do you want to do here?" I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, asked very rhetorically by that individual. And he said, "Acha, wahan kya karte ho?" I said, "BPO karta hu." And he said, "Wahi kar lo." Very rhetorically he asked, said, "Ki wo kyun nahi kar lete?" Now, often I had thought about it, but all of these things with that question, and due credit here to Kalyan Paul and his organization Umang and Grassroots to ask that question of me in 2008. And I came back and I called up Venki, and then the story, of course, you saw a little bit of it in the video. The story started about saying this is a viable idea. Why don't we think further about it? And then, of course, the starting of the idea happened, and we built upon it and took it further, etc.
That is so empowering, Dheeraj, to hear that story. And a couple of things, one thing you mentioned about is what I don't want to do. And I think that clarity is also very important, what I want to do and what I don't want to do. And another thing that I picked up from what you shared is about what is it that I can do in this situation. So, we all critique about things, but we rarely do. And that being an armchair critic doesn't help anybody. But you went out, you took this initiative and you started this organization, which has had huge impact in the area. And I'd like to request you to share about what's the impact B2R Technologies has made in the area that you have been working out of. And, what also share with us, what does impact sourcing mean?
Sure. Oh, we have one of the experts on impact sourcing in our attendee list. I'd love to actually call upon Rita, who joined Rita, can I put you on the spot and ask you to share about impact sourcing instead of me, talking about it from you would perhaps give another dimension to it. I can, of course, add about the impact of B2R. Could I ask you to jump in, Rita? If you're able to hear me.
Rita was saying that it's early and she may be logging off. So maybe she's just logged off.
No, she's there. I can see.
She's there? Okay.
Yeah, she's very much here.
She's unable to unmute.
Okay.
Ruchi, can you unmute Rita, please?
Oh, yep, there it's unmuted. My apologies. Sorry, I have my camera off. It's a little early in New York, but I'm just excited to see this audience and Ashish, your commitment towards mindful living in the private sector. I think it's emerging to become a really important topic that particularly I think the younger generation, Gen Z, Gen X, we think about all that's happening in terms of talent right now. And so I think the subject matter is really, really important and emerging. Thank you, DHIRAJ, for calling me out and asking about the impact sourcing journey. As I mentioned in chat to Ashish, I'm a huge fan of what B2R has been doing over the years, and learned about it in very early days when I was living in India. But I think this model has really become a global phenomenon. We recently completed a study that concluded that there are 350,000 impact workers across the world. And that's both in developing countries and developed countries. So this idea that there are people who need support or are getting excluded systematically, right, from these very good digital jobs is actually a global phenomenon. And what we're seeing now is that both providers of services like B2R, as well as buyers of these same services, which are huge global conglomerates, are seeing not just the value in doing this, but also seeing that this meets their purpose in terms of being, companies with the purpose drive. So yeah, just excited to be listening as long as I can. And thank you so much, Ashish, for hosting this. And DHIRAJ, thank you as always for carrying the torch.
Thank you, Rita, for
Yes.
sharing your thoughts and views on it. I can just add a little bit more further to what Rita said. In a one line, if I may talk to the, to share about what exactly is, if I would just to put it in one line, it's outsourcing with social impact, which was coined as the term impact sourcing quite some time back when NASSCOM, and Rita was actually heading the NASSCOM Foundation around that time when she was in India, and it was coined as a word at that time. So it's sourcing with social impact, essentially outsourcing, with often carrying a negative connotation of a job being moved from one location to another. But outsourcing with social impact is, in a nutshell, and if I elaborate on it further, it is usually engaging with a vulnerable population which does not have the privilege, sometimes even of the kind of education that you and me have gone through and have got it by virtue of being in the family that we were born in. And without that privilege, if there is an education that somebody is coming with, what do they need as a leg up further is what is, whether it is the training, whether it is the opportunity next to home. That's really what, and there are different companies who are working like us across the globe. As Rita mentioned, there are 350,000 people who are in the same segment and category of individuals like this. And some of them are working with different sectors. So some of them are working with, even in the cities itself, you have a different kind of underprivileged population. It could be a slum dweller who has kids, who wants to have them take a better future for them. It could be a certain, especially I would say, a person with disability who's a PWD, and there are different categories and segments of people. What we chose as a segment first was the rural youth in the hills of Uttarakhand, and that's what we said we are going to work on. Of course, why Uttarakhand is often a question. I just showed you why I'm sitting in Uttarakhand. I love the hills. I've been a traveler here, but actually there are many good reasons. Other than that, the state actually has a literacy rate which is number 3 in the country, and a literacy rate which is so high, being such a small, otherwise insignificant in its size, but not insignificant in the forest cover that it has, and therefore environmentally and ecologically a very sensitive region, and therefore needing much more, and even very next to our borders. And therefore, again, there's so many reasons why Uttarakhand came into focus. And sourcing with impact done to a vulnerable population in rural Uttarakhand is what we started with. Today, as we speak, we have started working with other segments also, and those segments include women who want to get into the workforce, whether they are in a city or whether they are in a village. We have already had a conscious fair bias, if I may say so. Gender equity was there by design. We've always had more than 50% young women in our team, not by reservations, but by making sure we engineer our recruitment systems in that manner. The outreach is engineered in that manner. The filtering is engineered in that manner. but even more so women in the workforce who want to get back into the workforce, and also urban poor who want to get into a better situation from where they are. So these are two new segments that we are just about starting to work with. We have charted it out as part of our strategic vision for the next 5 years, that these two segments we will start working with in the next plan that we are starting to work on now. In terms of the social impact, that's the reason I was clarifying the segments. While I have a lot of metrics to share on that, there are social impact metrics that we track, including the dollars spent in direct wages, which across 13 years has been to the tune of about $3.6 million distributed as direct wages, as in lieu of the work that was done. About nearly 100,000 person days of employment, for which about $3.6 million, that's roughly about 25 crore rupees across 13 years, which has been given as direct wages to young people, to the rural youth. Along with that, around almost $950,000 or about 6 crore rupees for indirect procurement by local vendors that is done. Now, these are some good numbers, person days employed, dollar there. But I think the biggest impact that I relate to is also a metric which we track, but it actually has a softer quality to it. Just like we track the number of women that we employ. So we've currently got about 51% women. We've always had more than 50%. It's ranging between 45 to 63, and currently it's about 51. But one of the metrics that we track, and we take the help of our community partners and students who come and do these projects for us, is the shift in marriageable ages that has happened in women in rural areas because of the presence of an opportunity like this, which has created an economic change for them, has led to create different roles in the society as well as in the family. The average marriageable age when we came down here in 2009, we took a dipstick measurement, was 17 to 18 years, and we operate in about 135 villages across 3 districts. And that 17, 18 years has moved in the last 13 years. Today we measure it and it is about 23, 24 years at which a girl is getting married. She is now being given the choice of when she wants to get married, which was the biggest choice she never had. She used to be asked to, पल्लू बांध के, जैसे आपने सुना है गांव में किया जाता है कि 17-18 साल में इंटर पास हो गया तो शादी करवा देते हैं, क्योंकि अब बोझ किसी और को लेने देते हैं. Instead of being a burden, she has now become an economic contributor. And that has changed her status, not just in the house, but in the community as well. So I relate to that change perhaps as the largest one in terms of impact that has happened in the space that we operate in.
That's so awesome to hear, DHIRAJ. And women empowerment is something very close to my heart. And we're having this session about 10 days ahead of Navratri starting. So this is absolutely the right time. And we are going to have more sessions on women empowerment, and we will keep this community informed. And I'll request you, in case you have not joined the group, please do that now. We will share the link once again. That way you can stay connected with all the awesome events we organize every weekend. And I'd like to, there are a couple of things you mentioned, DHIRAJ, and I would like to, you mentioned about the billions of dollars that have been spent as salary and indirect benefits in the society. If you could give us a perspective of what the average household earning was, before B2R came in, and how it rose and the impact it has had on the community, that would help people put this in perspective.
Absolutely. So the average household income, we again did that as a study. And in fact, we didn't do this study. This was a study done by one of the community partners that we work with when we came in 2008, when I came for the first visit. In fact, that's when I started getting a little bit more of the picture. 2008, the study of average household incomes in the households that in and around the neighboring villages that we operate in was in the range of about 2,000 rupees a month that we are talking about. And over the last 10, 13 years, between 10 to 13, we do this survey every couple of years and we go back and talk about what is the average household income. It has moved up about 5 times to nearly about 10,000 rupees in and around the areas. Of course, with all the other aspects changing, but a 5-fold jump in the household income in and around those areas that we operate has been the number. So it's close to about 10,000 rupees now.
Wow. That's so awesome. And I'll request audience, there is a reactions button in your Zoom. You can clap, you can show thumbs up, you can show heart. If something that Dheeraj is sharing with you, resonates with you. Dheeraj, there is one more thing I would like to draw your thoughts on. Rita also spoke about vulnerable population. You spoke about the frustration which was there in the youth, that they are educated, but they don't get the right jobs. How did you go about getting them as a part of the mainstream, building capability? Because, the schools and the kind of schooling people get in the hilly area is very different from the capabilities. And you are delivering to clients who are based out of US and Boston, California. So how did you go about building capability and capacity?
That's a great point, because actually that's one of the biggest things which a lot of effort went into. Though the approach wasn't complicated, it was the basic approach of creating the capacity was to break down a particular piece of work. First of all, we said we are not going to train for training alone. We are going to train on specific work which is going to be linked to what a customer wants somebody to do. So it was very clearly market-related task, a market-related activity. A customer with whom we are bringing to the table wanted a job X to be done. And the very first customer we got, they wanted us to do meta tagging of law journals, and they still are. After 13 years, they still continue to be our customer. It's one of the largest law publishing firms in the country, Eastern Book Company. I'm very proud of the fact that we are associated with them. The fact that many lawyers who consult the Supreme Court judgments, SEC Online, if there's a lawyer in the group, they would know SEC Online. We have been working with the publishers of SEC Online now for last 13 years to give that. Now, that was a very technical kind of a job. Imagine somebody, and the average profile we hire is a high school pass. That's the minimum qualification, 10 years of formal education. And of course, now we are saying we'll give a preference to 12 years because we've seen the averages have moved up now. And we will also give a preference to people who are completing their graduations and their colleges, etc. But the minimum is, so 10th class is the minimum. So and at that time, we used to have more than 80% people in that category when we started. A person who has never touched a computer, 80% at that time were people who had never touched a computer, was to be actually doing meta tagging, which is XML tagging on. So there are different templates in which you have to fit in the judgment that is being given. You have to fit into that. It's a very technical job, which imagine, I mean, I've gone through 2 engineering degrees, and I had to pick it up first myself before we said, how are we going to teach this? So first of all, it has to be a very specific task. And then you have to deconstruct the task to small manageable chunks. And then you will look at what are the different knowledge pieces upstream and downstream of that task. So essentially, it is applying the basics of instructional design and then making a very rigorous training module around it. Then we created our first master trainer who came in, Rachna, when she came in, and she created that together with Venki, the co-founder. And we created the whole curriculum in that manner so that people, you saw that a little bit of that in the video, is it has to be designed so that the person is taken out of their comfort zone. And often failure is the only way which we actually reflect on things. So what is it going to do? You're actually setting it up so that the person is going to fail. And then you're going to keep that person in the reflect state so that you can then understand and then take it further into how do you absorb it better. So essentially, it used to be, since then, the complexity of the work that we do has only increased. If that was technical, today what we do for SEC filing for Donnelly is far more technical of the same kind, or what we do for bookkeeping and accounting for thousands of US companies. The bookkeeping is done in India by somebody who has never done bookkeeping or accounting in their academics. They are learning it in a 3-month. It's an intense boot camp, essentially, which is set up for the young person. And it is, you're drilled in every day, day after day. For 2 months, you're drilled into that. You're coming out of your comfort zone. 1 hour every morning, you'll be tested, you'll be given feedback, and then you'll also, of course, do it in a way which is fun to learn, because adults don't learn until they're having fun. And So therefore, the training and instructional design was a very key part. And today, that's what we find is our differentiator, our USP. When we go into a complex piece of work, like we just started doing localization and translation, in fact, we go into a complex piece of work with the same mindset. You have to deconstruct it, de-skill it, break it into manageable components. It's basically the componentization of that. And then you create the instructional design and training. What is the upstream and downstream of it, so that the person understands that if I am going to do something wrong, what is going to be impacted? What is downstream from this? What is upstream? Where is this coming from? And that is how the training is designed and delivered in a very, very rigorous and tight manner. That's how the capability started on this piece. Of course, since then, we have not only created capability in this work context, we have also created leadership capacity over the last 13 years. We have created development centers, development journeys, assessment centers for leadership. And today, many of the teams today which are managed, the centers are managed by people who came in as a team member or as an associate 10 years, 12 years back. And today that person is actually leading the delivery for a center. So that leadership capacity has been created so that the centers become completely self-managed, and that capacity is continuously created in the pipeline of leaders as well as the pipeline of skills. They keep feeding into how the customer and the markets are asking for it.
That is so awesome, Dheeraj. These are really the best practices in adult learning that you're talking about. And just taking on that discussion further, I would on the building leadership capability, would you like to share with us how the people who had not traveled beyond Nainital went to Mexico to set up the BPO there?
Happy to do that. That came as literally a shot in the arm when we were going through a fairly, we had just come out of, we were beginning to come out of a very difficult period for us. The near death, as I had mentioned to you, we were just coming out of it, and we actually we had some people representing us in the US to be able to get work from there, and we still do. And one of them actually received a call from the governor of Yucatan. Somebody in Mexico called him up, and that person in Mexico called up this gentleman who represented us. And that person called me up and said, hey, the guys in Yucatan are interested in talking to you. They've been tracking us for like a couple of years, and they like what we are doing in Uttarakhand. So the question being asked to us is, can you replicate this in Mexico? And I said, wow. I mean, first of all, when you think of Mexico, you don't think too many. Right now, of course, there is another side to it, but usually there are many negative things associated with it also which come to mind. And we weren't very sure. So we went in, DHIRAJ, who's been with us right from when we started, our operations manager. He and I flew down, we saw it, we did a dipstick study. But interestingly, as to the point that Rita was just making, we could have been sitting in rural Uttarakhand. Everything was the same, except for the language. The same problems, the same economic divide, the same skill divide, the same gender disparity. We could be sitting in rural Uttarakhand, except for a translator who was translating for us and talking to the groups we were meeting. And we went and met over there. So the government actually said, why don't you come in and replicate this for us? And we said, we don't have any money and we don't have any work. You need to give us sales related work has to be there, as well as it needs to be funded by setting up in some manner. So the government actually helped us by saying, we'll become your customer. There's so much that the government wanted done. And they said, we are happy to give part of that to this team. But the team has to be local and the team has to be set up here. So they roped in a local partner and we talked to them. We set it up in that manner. And as you said, the team who flew in from here, 2 young men and 2 young women, again, it was in the same 50-50 ratio that we've always kept. They flew into Mexico along with DHIRAJ, our manager, and they set up a center by hiring locals and training them. Now, somebody who has never spoken English fluently was training somebody in Spanish with the help of a translator. So again, breaking down a component into various things, and then using, of course, a translator and an interpreter who was real-time with our team, so that we could utilize their services. And the team started delivering and delivered one of our most successful delivery projects started in that same manner. So Mexico came in that fashion where we understood that this is not just a local problem. We, of course, knew about it. It's a global issue. And our delivery footprint in such a place, which was so far, so remote, so different, and yet so similar, it gave us a confidence of a different nature altogether.
So I'm sure, Dheeraj, and I'm sure all the challenges that you faced during these 13 years also must have taken your confidence to another level. And we would like to hear from the near-death experience that you just mentioned about.
Sure, sure. Yeah, we had our share of fair share of challenges, and we continue to have them. It's the journey of every organization as it traverses through its own meandering through the paths that everybody has. Many personal challenges, many organizational challenges. The near death that we faced actually in 2013 came in because we had a funding event which didn't happen. So we had gone in for a second round. We had the initial 4 years, we went into funded growth, which was, we knew this model was great. So I had put up money, Venki had put up money. We had taken some from a few angels, and they had helped to put up the initial seed capital. But then we said, to really make this work, we need to go big. So we had gone in for institutional investment, and the first round investors were great for us. They were very patient. They helped us. They brought us to the level of where we were, almost 4 or 5 centers and about 330 people. And then we said, let's go for the next round, so that now we know that this is about 300 people. We can take this to the next 2,000, 3,000 people. The second round funding happened, and the funding came in from another agency. It was a European agency. I think perhaps the manner in which that happened, it set up we got one tranche of money. The second tranche of money was linked to a set of milestones. It's very common in how it happens in venture-backed or venture-funded backed firms. Some of the milestones are not met, and then you have a lot of trouble. Now, in this case, we had not met our sales milestone. We were off by about 20%. And we had met some of the other milestones, but that's when they said, we're not giving you the next tranche of money. And we said, look, so we tried explaining. All of that happened. The usual, the drama, as I call it, happened between, at that time, it is not drama. It was the crisis of a very real nature, where for me, the biggest challenge was, how are we going to make payroll happen for 335 people? Because at that time, we were in a high cash burn cycle. We were in a high growth stage, high cash burn. We were earning less than 1/3 of what we were spending. And in that ratio, that's how you usually grow fast in that. And with an investor-led growth, that's how it usually is meant to happen. Time is meant to be your biggest, you're racing against it most of the time. Or so they would want us to believe. So at that particular point, when the brakes were slammed on us in terms of funding, and we said, okay, well, we tried many options. We actually were told by the investors also saying, why don't you just shut it down? Actually, that came in after I was diagnosed with an illness at that time, and I was hospitalized, and I went into, it was almost like a dark moment in my, not just my personal life, but professionally for us. The investor is saying, look, now that it's not just the company, but मतलब वो जो जाने भी तो यारों का डायलॉग है, डिमेलो तू तो गया वाला डायलॉग था वो उनका. Now, Dheeraj, why don't you just shut the company down? This company is not getting any money from us, and you're also down in the dumps. Why don't you just shut it down? And the only response to that was, look, I didn't start it because of you. So when I feel I can't do it anymore, I will. But I don't feel that yet. And so we went back to the team, and we sat together with all of our 335 people sitting together in different groups of centers. And we said, look, what do we want to do about this? Now, we don't have any investor money. We do have customers who are still believing in us, but they are much lesser than what our current capacity of team is. And we have our teams together. So we talked about it. And I think, again, one of the best practices on the people side, we have always followed, it is a very key value for us, is inclusion. We do not take decisions. Sometimes we are, the only word is, sometimes we are anal about taking decisions, but it has to be done in the right way, because it has to be done inclusively. There isn't a way that I will unilaterally prevail over something and say, look, this is what we got to do. Today morning, also every Saturday morning, our core group of 23 people in the company who are senior leaders across all our locations, they get together, we talk about key things, we put up an agenda, we talk about key decisions, because that's how leadership capacity has been created in our teams. We can't just unilaterally do things and expect that leaders will start getting created. So it's learning from our mistakes. So we went back to the team. We asked them, what do you want to do? Do you want to shut down? If so, it's okay. We sat literally together with everybody and said, do you want to shut down? Or we can go forward, but we'll have to tighten our belts. And nearly everybody, in fact, I remember the answer given to me by one young girl who had been with us for several years at that time, and she said, "धीरज जी, यथा शक्ति करना होगा." तो कुछ लोगों के लिए ये पैसा पॉकेट मनी है और कुछ लोगों के लिए चूल्हा इसी से जलता है। तो जिसके लिए चूल्हा जलता है उसको प्राथमिकता देनी होगी, और जिसके लिए पॉकेट मनी है उसको खुद बताना होगा कि मेरे से ज्यादा ले सकते हैं। So we actually devised a mechanism which was self-created and co-created by the team in how work will be distributed across the people who were willing to stay back in this arrangement. And that was, I think, the most key plan, and all credit to the team to come up with that plan. DHIRAJ spearheaded it. He helped put together all of this into a model which we follow. And we actually created that whole mechanism of everybody coming together. And the only way that I can call it is we've been working like a family ever since then. It's like whenever you have a crisis, today we've had so many of the issues of since then. Our near death was only perhaps, I think, our starting of our learning of how to handle a crisis. When actually the pandemic happened, my team didn't even blink. They just said, "Acha, batao, kaun sa crisis ka SOP nikalna hai? Which SOP do you want us to pull out? Because we can learn something from this one, something from that one, and maybe we'll tweak this because this time physical movement is not happening." So they actually came up with acha sabzi wala truck and doodh wale truck mein we can move our laptops and everything, and we'll try to do everything to what is required to be done. So again, we have learned to live. I think at that time, while I thought I was nearly dead when I came out of the hospital, I was thinking, what am I going to do which is different to make sure that the rest part of my life is going to be different. But I think today I look back and I see as that crisis as the biggest blessing for me personally, as well as for the organization, because we learned how to survive. Today we call ourselves a cockroach who wants to fly, because like a cockroach, we believe nothing can perhaps destroy us, not even a nuclear holocaust. And the aspiration to fly continues to be as we had it. So crisis, I think, is good. It's an opportunity, while it is very painful to go through at that point in time. But if you reflect on it and if you stick together, you apply the basic principles of living together with inclusion, the family environment that we worked in, treating people with respect and openness, the basic principles of how you would have human behavior happen. If those are applied to what we have in the organization, that's all we did. And it took us about a year and a half to come out of it, to when we came into a sort of a near break-even kind of stage. And the last 6 years after that, it's been 8 years since that time now. It took us a year and a half to last 6 years. We have gradually been only increasing our profits so that we can comfortably at least fund our own organic growth. We may not be able to fund very large marketing and sales budgets, which is actually our biggest challenge of growing in this model. But what we can do is manage to survive and our head above water. The pandemic happened. Today, the Ukraine war has impacted us, in fact, more than the pandemic, because the financial markets are in a tailspin and a lot of jobs that we do are related to the financial market. So we have now learned to survive all of that. The team is doing it, all of it. I mean, we sit together, we talk about, but the proposal about what we should be doing doesn't come from me. That's really what I'm most happy about.
That is so amazing to hear, DHIRAJ, the collective leadership, the values that you have. And I think that over a period of time, the values become the brand. And I think that is so awesome to hear. You also mentioned about the growth in organic profits. So we'll be happy to hear. We've discussed in fair bit about the people part of the equation. We'll be happy to hear about the profit part and the economies of scale. In the video, we saw that it's a low cost operation. So how does that also translate into benefit for the customers? That is also, we would like to know more about, DHIRAJ.
Happy to talk about that. Yeah, the bottom line has to be, in fact, this is a very interesting question. I'm just going to take a minute to switch on the light. It's already getting dark over here.
Yeah.
In fact, about 12 years, 13 years back, when my first funding round was happening, the investor actually asked me a question, which I thought it was a very stupid question, but most of the questions are pretty relevant. He said, "Are you a business first or are you a social entity first? What are you first?" And I just kept wondering, and I gave him the answer, which I believe was actually, I still believe that answer is, why does it need to be any one? Why can't it be both? Why can't it be and instead of an or? Why does it have to be or this or that? But while I recognize that a business, if it is social and socially inclined and it is impactful. But by design, I am now very clear about it. It took me a long time to get this right in my head. It has to be a financially viable business first. It cannot be just it can become a better financially viable business if it is done with the right principles of people, but it has to be first financially viable before it becomes anything to do with that. You can always weave these, intertwine these strategically. You can hardwire them, which is how we read it, that these are the business and the social parts. Every operational decision that we take today is intertwined, where the business decision is first evaluated through the many lenses of not just the financial lens, but from the impact it will have in the community, in the people, in the team, in the community inside the organization and the outside the organization. Everything is first studied with that lens. So while we learned a little in the second part, as I call it, in the B2R 2.0 version, we learned how to make profits. And in 3.0, and after Mexico is what we call ourselves around the 3.0, we learned how to utilize them better. The benefit for a customer actually is very, very sharp in terms of its cost benefit. So while you actually help a young person come out of a situation where economic and empowerment and financial empowerment happens, I think for the customer to be able to maybe sell it internally within the organization, the economic benefit, the fact that we are nearly between 30 to 50% cheaper and more cost efficient at the same productivity, at the same service level, we can deliver at least 30 to 50% more economically, more financial value for the customer sitting in the city. And that 30 to 50 depends on what is the baseline you take of which city and what reference points. So the economic benefit to that particular customer comes from essentially being able to do it faster, more efficiently. In fact, we have, for one of the work that we do, we are one among the 8 global sites, the same work we were talking about earlier in the SEC filing work, and we have remained #1 in quality for the last 3 years running.
Wow.
So being #1 in quality, being mindful of the fact that it has to have economic value for the customer, all have to go hand in hand. That's the only reason that it will make business sense for the customer as well as social sense for them. While these things cannot be seen in isolation, they need to be again hardwired together in that fashion. So it's very important that we set it up in that manner so that the profit is by design, the investment is made in that manner, and the training is done in that manner, so that the individual level, the unit economics level, and at the organizational entity level, all of it becomes profitable. So last 6 years has been a bootstrap profitable journey, and one that we've managed very, very carefully, keeps a very tight handle. We also learned how to keep a very tight handle on costs after our crisis. So keeping our numbers in that manner very, very tightly and consciously, we continue to add economic value in the same fashion.
Wow, that's so awesome to hear, DHIRAJ. Delivering world-class quality at 30 to 50% cheaper prices, which translates into benefit for everyone. I think that is so awesome, DHIRAJ. DHIRAJ, we heard you speak about the work you do for law firms, accounting firms. Would you share with us the entire bouquet of services that B2R provides for the corporations?
Absolutely, happy to do that. So our largest segment of work is in print and publishing, and we work with one of the world's largest print and publishing firms, and we are very proud to be associated as a partner with R.R. Donnelley. And a lot of the work we do with them in financial print and commercial print, that is a reflection of our capabilities that so the law publishing firm we started with helped us create the domain skills in a particular area. And that's what we again felt was very key, that you need to be good in the business that you're in. It's not that you just go there. We are not sitting in some chanda mangne wala exercise saying, you have to be thumping the table with confidence. And that's the only way the customer knows. You need to know your job very well. And we know that we know the job very well, and you have to deliver very well to it, which is why we do a lot of that work. So print and publishing, right from photo management services to digital publishing services to conversion services to typesetting, the whole gamut of print and publishing services is the largest segment of work that we do. The other large piece, which is in accounting and bookkeeping, we do a lot of financial services work. We help a lot of companies with their accounts. Earlier, we were doing it only for US companies. We have now started doing it. During the pandemic, we launched are India domestic accounting services. And now we are doing it for both for companies, for non-profits, for trusts. We are doing it for India companies as well as for US companies. So we have a full-fledged team to service both the domains. There's a 50 people team who's servicing just the US market. And again, the miracle is that you're talking about a person who's never done accounting in their class 10 or even learned commerce in anything. But in the boot camp, they are trained right from the debit credit to how to do a bank reconciliation. They're trained into that. So bookkeeping, accounting, financial services, it is now we've entered into a very new and upcoming area in data labeling, which is image and video annotation. You've seen a lot about the driverless cars and computer vision. We've started working with now partners who are giving us that kind of work. And that's what we are now doing. In fact, a lot many projects coming in on that, which is image and video annotation, object tracking, sentiment analysis. Essentially, it's the feeding into the artificial intelligence and machine learning. So again, what we call ourselves again is the human in the loop. Now, we thought at one hand that computers are going to take away jobs. And sure enough, everybody's been talking about how AI is going to take away jobs. The important thing to realize is while AI has the potential to take away a few jobs in certain way, it has the potential to create huge amount of jobs. And today, some of the largest projects that we are in the process of kicking off are in AI and ML. So there are 300 jobs which are being discussed even as we speak of going into the AI ML space. So yes, technology will always be disruptive. The trick is can you be ahead of the curve and plan for it? Instead of looking at it as a challenge, how can you look at it as an opportunity? And with that opportunity, how can you create capacity within to capitalize on that opportunity? And that's what we're trying to do in the skills. We've also done localization and translation work. We started working with the world's largest technology company. I'm not allowed to name them. I won't name them, but you can take a guess and you're probably right. And we work with the first level vendor for them with English to Hindi translation on the technology work that we do for them. There's human resource, recruitment, back office support we give. We do legal work. Again, we're talking of somebody like a 10th pass doing contract abstraction, which is reading an MSA, reading an SOW, and trying to extract the key field information from there. So we do a lot of legal work. Then there's a lot of research work we do, data mining, data scrubbing, and the advisory firms. We are again proud to be partnering with Everest Group also. So Everest and Rita are, of course, an advisor to the industry large, but they also happen to be a customer for us. I'm very proud of the fact that we had partnered with them many years back for delivering. We manage the backend databases for them, and that's been very, very helpful for freeing up their analyst time to do what is really the core job for an analyst to do. So the whole range of it, right from managing backend for research advisory, doing data labeling, to accounting and financial, to print and publishing. The whole, if I put it in a nutshell, the variety of service is only limited by your imagination, not by anything else.
So awesome, Dheeraj. Though, however much we would love to keep hearing it's the time we are about to come to the end of the session, and I would also like audience to have their chance to ask you questions. I'm sure they have been listening very intently. But before we open up the session for Q&A, we would request your feedback. Also, we have been getting some awesome feedback on the chat, but we would appreciate if you can take our time, 30 seconds, to fill out this feedback form. And then we will resume with our question and answer session. I'll have one last question with Dheeraj before I open up the session. So please click on the link which we have shared in the chat and fill out the feedback form. Please type FD, feedback done, once you have filled out the form. And while you are filling out the form, I'd like to share with you that next Saturday, we have another awesome session with Mr. Rajiv Agarwal, who has set up Majha Ghar, and this is an organization which is working with destitutes. It's the largest organization in Maharashtra working with destitutes. He was a CEO of a very large FMCG company and is given all that up to set up this home. Another amazing story. These sessions are being organized because 29 September is World Heart Day, and the theme this year is love for humanity and love for the community. So it is in this context we are organizing these sessions. So please fill out the feedback form and also click on the link to join our community and stay updated about these awesome sessions that we conduct. And one last question from me to you, Dheeraj, before we open up to audience. I hear you say that there is high quality work you do, which is at 30 to 50% lower. There's world-class work and different variety of services. Is there a message you would like to share with the business community on why they should partner with B2R and benefit for win-win benefit?
Sure. Happy to talk to I would say if you wish to look at for the message to the corporate community is I would say you mentioned about the Harvard conversation. It was actually in one of the Harvard conversations that I brought this up because at that time also a lot of social organizations were being put under the microscope to say, what are your impact metrics? How are you measuring impact? How are you measuring what you are doing and how you can do better on those impacts? My question to them was, look, we represent 0.00005% of invested capital in the world. When are you going to ask Coke and Boeing that question? With all due respect to both of those companies, when are you going to ask the question of social impact metrics? Is the question I'm going to ask every corporation. When are you going to measure your impact on this planet? When are you going to measure what is the real impact that you leave as a footprint? When you can, I was hearing a lovely talk a little while back. I was part of a webinar which is talking about livelihoods in Uttarakhand, and there were some real fantastic experts who were speaking on it, including Vijay Mahajan, who's an expert on this sector in the social space. He was there in that webinar. One of the things which just I took away from there was the profit might be yours, but the resources are not yours. You're actually drawing from the planet, from your children. You're going to take those resources. And in fact, we are not, you talked about many other planet related aspects. While of course our carbon footprint is much lower, almost a third of what it is in the city of the same job, the additional aspect of being very mindful and conscious of our carbon footprint is what we also do. So my message to a corporation is, please examine how you are actually leaving this planet. Are you leaving it a better place for your stakeholders? And your stakeholder cannot be just your investor. It has to be more than your investor. Is please introspect, reflect on that. Whether you choose to partner with us is a choice, of course, you have. If you want world-class service delivery and also want to change the life of a young girl in the hills, this is a beautiful place for you to examine as a possibility. And many partners like ours, right from the Fortune 500s to small and medium businesses, we have a whole range of companies that we service with. So if you wish to look at those choices, you have really a choice. And that's what I have been trying to get across to most corporations. Just like it's not just choice as an organization, choice as an individual. You can live more sustainably, more mindfully, with treading lightly on the planet, as well as being more mindful of the impact that you leave is positive on every human being and every part of the planet that you touch. That's the only message I would give to a corporate.
That is so awesome, Dheeraj. That is so awesome. It's truly a beneficial partnership for everyone. And I urge the corporate sector to please connect with DHIRAJ DOLWANI, B2R Technologies, and share with them the work which can create a virtuous upward cycle for everybody. And on that note, I will now open up the session for Q&A. You may raise your hand using the reactions button, and we will take the questions one by one. If there are no questions, we're happy to hear your comments also. Dheeraj, is there, while we are waiting for questions to come up, is there any particular segment of clients that you look for? You mentioned about insurance, revenue cycle management. Is there any sector that
financial services, publishing, localization, these are all things which we have been comfortably doing. So if you want to avoid the sort of the learning curve for a new service line for us, then those are good places for us to start with itself. And if there are no questions or comments, I am happy to show you around one of our centers that we have a team dialed in from one of our locations. People, if seeing me sitting over here and talking and hearing me is one thing, but seeing it apni aankhon se, I'm happy to ask them to open up their videos and you can see them around, and it'll give you a different sense. In case there are no questions, I can see there is one already.
Manu, who's there? Manu, please go on. Ruchi, could you please unmute him? Ruchi, are you there?
Good evening.
Yeah, Ashish, 1 second.
Yeah, I can hear Manu now.
Able to hear me now?
Yep.
Yes, we can hear you, Manu.
Yeah, good evening, sir. I just wanted to know how did you dealt with the problems with the village parents while sending their girls to your offices and playing games along with the boys, because this happens. I have been working in rural sector also for the last 5 years, and I've seen that they do have some kind of problems with sending the girl child to like offices and all these things. How you dealt
Very
with
right. You're very right, Manu. That's really a wonderful point to bring up, because we did have a lot of those problems, not just about sitting and playing games. उठना बैठना, साथ चल के घर जाना, वापस आना, वो खिलखिलाते हुए एक दूसरे से बात करना, उस सब में तकलीफ थी, बिकॉज ये एक ऐसा परिवेश है, एक ऐसी कम्युनिटी है जिसने ये चीजें नहीं देखी थी, तो नया था ये, और किसी भी नई चीज में हमेशा बदलाव में एक चुनौती कोई ना कोई आती थी. We did a very simple thing. We actually talked to them together, just like we had. The inclusion was not restricted to the team; it was included in the community. So we have monthly, quarterly meetings where families are invited. We have an annual meet where families are again invited. We work very closely with the community partners. So we did not recreate the relationship with the community. We work with, so for us, the two large NGOs that we work with is DHIRAJ and Lakshmi Ashram. And DHIRAJ has been working here in 35 years. So we said, we are going to piggyback on your relationship. We work closely with them. But the simple answer to it was we sat together and talked to them कि अच्छा बताइए आपको क्या चुनौती लग रही है. The bigger challenge was when we started doing night shifts. And in night shifts, there were the same thing कि हमारी लड़की, हमारी बहू, हमारी बेटी कैसे रात को जाएगी काम करने. We gave them not just the assurance, but we showed them. We said, let's walk around. How will it happen? नाइट शिफ्ट होगी तो कहाँ होगी, 2 बजे अगर वो फ्री होगी तो बगल में डॉर्मेट्री है जहां वो जाके अपने कमरे में सुरक्षित आराम करेंगे, और उसके बाद में जब घर जाने का समय होगा तब जाएंगे. वी डोंट हैव कैब्स रनिंग एट 2 AM. If the person is living next doors, they will be escorted next doors with somebody from the center. But if they are not, then they will be given accommodation space. So the simple answer is we talked to the parents. उनकी चिंता, अगर मेरी बेटी अगर इस तरह से अगर कुछ करने जाए तो मुझे भी उतनी ही चिंता होगी. And we sat as parents, as community members, we talked to them. And I think the biggest thing was when I'm laughing is I remember when जब वो night shift का पूरा बखेड़ा हुआ था, तो there was actually a young man who had come and created a huge issue and uproar in that village meeting, saying हमारी बेटी, हमारी बहू, ये मतलब कैसे and कैसे रात में काम करने दे सकते हैं हम उनको. And the same meeting, 2 of the young girls, they stood up and they said, मैंने अपने माता पिता से पूछा है, मैंने उनको समझाया है कि मैं घर में भी आराम से काम में मदद कर सकती हूँ, रात में अपना काम करके कुछ कमा के भी ला सकती हूँ. उनका पेरेंटल कंसेंट भी लिया है, मेरा कंसेंट है. तुम होते कौन हो इस बेगानी शादी में आके नाचने वाले? So to me, the confidence of the young girl was the answer to the community more than my saying anything.
Second question is, are you just in Uttarakhand right now, or are you planning to move into other states and villages also?
We are open to moving in other states and villages, Manu. The question has always been, it should be a viable cluster. We found that the economics work well as a cluster. So putting one center in one state, economics will not usually be great. So we have 4 centers here, and we have about 400 people across these 4 centers. And there are managers, support staff, enabling, IT, HR, all of those enabling teams that need to be there at all levels. So the cluster is usually at a certain scale. We are open to going, and we have had discussions with several others in different other locations. We again have started working to create a pipeline of, again, we work with community partners. So we have started talking to some community partners for other locations, but it's going to be largely demand driven. We know very clearly if somebody says, मुझे 10 लोग चाहिए यहाँ पर, I would rather partner with a similar partner like me over there. But if somebody says, I can give you 100 jobs, then I am open to looking at setting up a location and then talking about how those clusters can be created. We are not close to it while we have an affinity to the hills. And we saw that there were certain disadvantages that we were trying to cover in the hills. But we would still think all of those disadvantages are nearly there, barring a few which the hills additionally have. And we are open to other locations, other states, other places in the same way.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manu.
Thank you, Manu, for that question. And Shashi, you are next. Please go on.
Yeah. So DHIRAJ, So, first a disclaimer, right? So I am coming from a space where, you've achieved and had more impact than I probably ever will, right? So the point is that the thing that you said about corporations to think about, the effect they're having on the environment, on the planet, and the impact each one of us has. I'm basically, I just want to understand, corporations have been asked, CSR has been mandated and things like that, and the climate, etc. Is it see, profiteering and what, benevolence or whatever are paradoxical. They don't go together, right? So when there's a Coke, they're there to make profits. It doesn't matter. So they can do good by just knocking off their main product, right? They don't need to do anything else. So is it actually happening, right? Or is it another a big wave of whatever, PR and things like that? That is because you're talking to global people, you're talking globally, you're experiencing with people, because we keep hearing it all the time. And I'm saying it personally. I'm at home, where people are talking about banning plastic, plastic band kar dega, but doodh ka theli to plastic mein aata hai na. So, and we're teaching kids, and kids are saying, no, we will not celebrate Diwali, etc. So basically, from a life point of view, for my own self, I'm not part of a big corporation. Is it another propaganda, right? Or is it actually making sense? Or is it actually there? And I'm talking about from a global perspective to local. See, I'm also attached. I work. No, I try and contribute. So healing. There's an organization called Healing Himalayas, who remove both Uttarakhand, Himachal. They're removing plastic. They conduct treks, remove plastic waste, etc. Right. So I go on treks. I do my bit. But is it? I don't know whether it's an actually large propaganda, because you don't know half the time what is actually happening and what is being projected for us to believe.
Very large question you asked, Shashi, and I can understand how much you are passionately feeling about that question. I can see that passion coming through in that question. I'll try my best to give you what I believe is the answer to that.
Sure.
I when I started here in 2009, it is not as if that with the 1,000 people that we have employed, 100,000 person days of employment, 25 crore disbursed into direct wages. Now, did it make an impact to the world? I don't know. It made an impact to, let's say, the 5,000 families that we touched. So to me, it is like the starfish example, which is often seen.
Yeah. Yes.
But to this person, to this individual, for me, the simplest way of answering that is I can create a pocket of excellence around me and I can keep growing that. With me, that is the only logic that I can apply. अगर मैं नकारात्मक रूप से सोचूं कि यार इस सब से कुछ नहीं होगा, मेरे हिसाब से जो कंपनी प्रॉफिटियर करके अगर CSR भी करके कुछ अच्छा कर रही है, it's also another route. Maybe it is a PR route. I don't care. The fact that some of that is actually getting good benefit to good people in some manner, it's okay. Whatever be the intention is, maybe just to save some CSR funding. But to me, the crux of the answer is, to this starfish, it makes a difference. So I'm going to try till it gives me the fulfillment, and it gives me the purpose of my fulfilling my own purpose. My journey, it becomes more purposeful with the help of that experience. That's really, whether a corporation is changing or not. I wish you were talking about some of them by just stopping their products will make the world a better place. I can name Coke as the very first one. If they throw away sugary water, probably the world will be a better and healthier place to stay in. And today you can see it. Pepsi has changed its marketing strategies. Today, no longer is that the only product they sell. They are looking at juices and a whole bunch of healthful snacks and all that. Now, it might take them a decade or two. The point is, I think, also not just to put it on the corporation saying, what am I going to put pressure on that corporation to make sure that if I am going to support them in any way, or I am going to try and create a different alternative for myself, is a difficult question to often ask. If I am not going to use detergent, but I am going to use bioenzyme, which I make myself, it's a difficult thing to do. And I make it every 3 months in my own house with all the citrus that I eat. I make my own bioenzyme, feed it into my garden, and I eat the fresh vegetable from that garden. It's a difficult thing to do. Of course, now there are many sustainability ventures who are selling bioenzyme. So to me, it's the personal touch of what are you going to do, while of course the corporation will do whatever it thinks to become more sensitive to these points. But and some of those CSR initiatives are definitely reaching out and taking some good actions. we can only hope that it will keep increasing as a movement.
Fair enough. I think point taken. Starfish example. Let us do what we can. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Shashi, for that question. And thank you, participants, for taking our time and joining us on a weekend. And one last request to DHIRAJ. Would you like to share a closing comment with the audience and with the people who are going to watch the recording later, to the corporations, how they can partner with B2R and make the world a better place? The people, planet, and profit motive.
I would just say that the parting message is the same, and that was actually I was wondering in that context of if you can redefine. My parting message would be, instead of redefining your success definition of becoming a larger corporation, moving up from Fortune 200 to 100, or becoming a unicorn, I would say if you can redefine your success to health, happiness, and holistic living, I would think that's a great message for you to think about and reflect.
Wow. Wow. What a powerful note to finish this awesome session on health, holistic living. Health, holistic living, and
happiness.
Happiness. Health, holistic living, and happiness. Very powerful. Thank you, everybody. Please unmute. We'll unmute everybody and say bye. Have a nice weekend, and see you next Saturday, 5 p.m. for an awesome session with Mr. Rajiv Agarwal. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Ashish. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you, DHIRAJ. Thank you so much for the wonderful session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, DHIRAJ. Thank you, Ashish.
Thank you. Thank you, Anjana.
Thank you all.